If not, staff recommends a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Do a roll call vote on these. Commissioner Sandcamp,
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
Abstain. Wasn't here.
Commissioner Amatuza,
Aye.
Commissioner Griga's absent, Commissioner Gunther's absent, Commissioner Blazak's absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo,
Aye.
and Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Great, there are 5 votes in favor, none against, with 1 abstention. The minutes from August 12th are approved. Correspondence. All copies of correspondence and related application materials are linked on tonight's agenda. Announcements. So we do have a couple announcements just in regards to cases that have carried this evening. Case 8A, H-23-0126, has requested to carry to the October 21st regular meeting. And then for demos, case 11C, 169 to 179 Palisade Ave has requested to carry to the October meeting. 11D, 116 Magnolia Ave has requested to carry to the October HPC meeting. Case 11E, the Morris CA and CRR, there's no legal address for that. That's why that's written like that, has requested to carry to the October HPC meeting. And then in 11B, which is the Cary demolition cases, 384 Communipaw has once again requested to carry to the October 21st meeting. So we are for clarity's sake, we are only hearing demolition cases 11A and 11B tonight. The rest of the demolition cases have been carried to the October regular meeting. Any questions on any of that? Cool. All right, if there are any members of the public in attendance who would like to speak regarding matters of historic preservation that are not on tonight's agenda, again, this is for not on tonight's agenda, please approach the public comment mic. Staff sees no members of the public present and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have no old business on tonight's agenda because case 8A carried, so that gives us just new business. Robert, if you'd like to call the first case.
Yes, thank you, Maggie. I'll call case H-24-0151. The applicant is Kristen Hopkins Clegg, RA, on behalf of Christina Vu and Patrick Fox, owners. The address is 63 Bright Street in the Van Vorst Park Historic District. The application is for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a 3-story rear addition not visible from the public right-of-way, facade restoration, and interior renovations at a contributing altered 3-story Italianate-influenced Greek Revival masonry row house built circa 1860.
All right, Kristen will swear you in.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? May you please spell and state your name for the record?
Sure. My name is Kristen Hopkins-Clegg, K-R-I-S-T-I-N-S-H-O-P-K-I-N-S-C-L-E-G.
Thank you. And if you could just make sure that you're speaking into the mic.
I think you have to turn the mic on. There's like a tap button, you'll see. It just says push, but it's really a tap.
Got it.
And as long as the green light is on, you're good.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so 63 Bright Street, the front facade has not been taken care of for quite some time, so the homeowners are going to, I actually met with Dan on site for several hours to kind of go through how we could maintain what's there and also repair what's there or restore. But the real part of the project that's in question is the full height addition at the back. So here are some elevations of what we plan to do. Again, we're aligning with the adjacent properties. Both properties on either side have already had additions, some multiple additions over the years. So what we're doing is we are aligning with the project on the right side for the height, and we are aligning with the property to the left as coming out for 19'6" from the existing property. And then you can kind of see, let me go back to the existing property. So this is the exterior facade as it is right now in the rear. You can see this is an addition on both sides here. So in the back, what we're doing is we're actually doing stucco, and we're doing warm, hold on, let me just, we're doing a kind of warm, light color stucco on that back. It does kind of follow with some of the other properties along that area. And then it's very much relative to the block plan. Lots of the existing homes in this area are all added onto Fairmount. We are doing Marvin Elevate windows in the back, on the back property here. Let me just talk through this. So we're adding windows all along the kitchen back here. They're all Marvin Elevate, and then a Marvin Elevate slider at the bottom. And in the front, we're following all the historic protocols of having the SPC 26 brick molding. We are, like I said, we're removing all the paint and actually going down to the original lintels and sills, and also completely replacing and actually opening up the front doorway as it was already been filled in over the years. So, and then we are trying to restore all the brick and repoint as needed. So let me go back to this sheet that kind of shows you the elevations, which I'm sure you guys are most interested in.
A condition of the existing stairs and railings?
The front stairs and railing will be also restored.
Okay, so could you give us some details about how you're restoring them? Are you recoating the stairs with brownstone material?
We are. We're cutting back the stone, and then all the steps will be. They will be. So like the front. Let me see if I can show you what the current condition is, because on each side of the stair, it's actually a different condition. Let me see if I can show you. So we're repointing brick on one side. Let me go here. Do I not have? So what you can't see is this side is actually brick on the stairs here, and then this is actually going to be the brownstones are going to be recoated here. So they don't actually have the same condition on both sides. But I talked to Dan, and we kind of went through what was the right thing to do there. I'm sorry, I don't have that side. But then this entire area here will be kind of chipped back. There's some water infiltration, but we think that we can kind of keep what's there and restore instead of, we're not taking it down and replacing. The railing and the gate are actually not being taken down. We are scraping and then repainting with like the black iron paint. Because it's actually in pretty decent condition. There's not a terrible amount of rust or anything. And then we are also, the gate is kind of, has leaned over time, so we are putting new posts in that back to help support that.
Is the gate on the window, the ironwork on the window remaining or coming off?
That was going to come off. Yeah.
That's great. Glad to hear it. And you mentioned, I'm sure I'm not familiar with
Oh, it's the brick mold.
SP26?
It's just the brick mold that we add to the Marvin Ultimate windows.
Okay,
Because it's more of the era and historic.
okay, rather than going with the stock brick mold that they provide?
Right, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Will there be any green space in the front?
Yes, we are adding some. Let me go to the. We couldn't actually meet the requirement, but we did as much as we possibly could. Again, I reviewed this with Dan just because we have the steps down, and so we're actually adding 38 square feet in this front area. So it's more than what was there. Right now, there's a lot of mold on on stone, so you know, there's, even though it's north facing, we can get some.
Great.
And your color scheme for the front, just curious about what you've chosen.
Yeah, so let me see, let's go back here. So we're actually recoding with this middle brownstone color here. And then any accents like the window trim and part of the cornice will have the Newburyport blue. The adjacent properties both have some of the blue in it, so we felt like it was kind of cohesive. And then also trying to, do the brownstone as much as possible, like on the water table. We're hoping to restore the brick and actually not coat this bottom piece. There's actually the second layer of the brick is actually in really good condition, so we're going to try to, push and pull some of the interior together.
And you did say the rear facade was stucco in that,
In like
Light
like
cloud.
a warm gray cream kind of, that grayish kind of color.
thank you.
Do you have the spec of the light fixtures, the two light fixtures on the front?
Somewhere in here, let me see. I submitted them, hold on, I think they're here. I may have submitted them and not have them in the drawing. I do not have the specs on me.
I think it's there.
Let me just see one more time. What did I do? Yeah, they're not in the drawings. I think I submitted them separately, which,
Okay, if it's not one, I don't recall if it was one of the exhibits, but if it's not, we can just make sure that's a condition. Can you just
it
describe?
would be like the typical lantern downcast lights that, like there's a rejuvenation one I typically use.
What color?
It would be black.
Black. Yeah.
Or the oil red bronze, because they are doing more of the brownstone and blue, so.
And on the existing facade, sort of right in that middle zone, I can't quite figure out what that pimple is. Is that
Oh,
a
it's
camera?
being removed. It's like a speaker kind of thing. Or
Okay,
something.
so
I
that's
don't know.
just- that
There's
just
been a
comes out.
lot of additive
Okay.
features. But like everything, like they will be replacing PSE&G with, they'll be upgrading amps and all that stuff. So we'll get the meters off the front of the house as much as
that's
possible.
great.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments? Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's
Okay. I think we can safely move to public comment. If there are any members of the public present who would like to speak regarding this application, you can approach the public comment mic. Staff sees none and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we can move into staff comments. As Krista mentioned, Dan had been working primarily with the applicant on this, but I'm going to cover this application for him tonight. The staff report is very straightforward. We are recommending approval of this project with conditions. The conditions in the staff report are pretty standard conditions. Number 2 is one that is additive in this case, that Dan is recommending vibration and crack monitors be installed on adjacent buildings during construction due to the age of these buildings. And then we have the condition brought up during testimony that the applicant shall submit specifications for all exterior light fixtures at the time of construction documents. Anyone else have any conditions that they would like to see included on this?
Not a condition necessarily, but did we have a material sample board?
I believe it was, they're kind of interspersed throughout the plans. I don't think we have hard copy samples, right?
No hard copies.
Okay. So we do have, let's see if Dan put that condition in here. So in condition 3, it does say material submissions not submitted to the HPC at this time, should be submitted at the time of construction documents, so we can collect those material samples at the time of CDs and review them to confirm that they match with what's on these plans,
Okay, that sounds
which
good.
is what we did all through COVID.
Yeah, I think we're just
Used
still
to
transitioning back to being in person.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Kristen, are you okay with those conditions? Great, okay. Again, staff is recommending approval of the application with conditions. If anyone wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions.
Second.
Okay. Do a roll call vote. Commissioner Sakong?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuza?
Aye.
Commissioner Sandcamp?
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga's absent. Commissioner Gunther's absent. Commissioner Blazak is absent. Vice Chair Gucciarda?
Aye.
And Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Great, there are 6 votes in favor, none against, with no abstentions. The COA is granted.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Yep. move to the
I'll
next
go
case.
ahead and
got
call
the
the
big
next
screen.
case, which is case H22-561. The applicant is Stephen Joseph, Esquire, on behalf of Big Elm LLC, owner. The address is 335 8th Street in the Hamilton Park Historic District. The application is for a certificate of appropriateness for interior renovation, facade restoration, and a proposed roof deck above the rear attached garage, visible from the public right-of-way, at an altered contributing frame and masonry Italianate corner row house constructed circa 1885.
Good evening, everybody. Stephen Joseph of Castano Quilitrami for the applicant. This is a full renovation of this building, but there's no site plan approval associated with this. There's no variances, so there'll be no planning or zoning board. It's just before the HPC this evening. Let's get our architect sworn in, and when we get up to the materials, I'll walk around with the material board. It's a little heavy, so I could help out with that.
Hello, good evening. Can you, my monitor's not pulling up here.
Yeah, let's get you sworn first, then we'll work on, Michael will come down and work on the tech
Can you
issues.
raise your right hand to be sworn, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you spell and state your name for the record?
Andres Cortez, ANDRESCORTES.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. You're good. I can use that. Should come up now. Thanks. Hi.
All right,
No, we try this.
still
No.
not popping up today.
Let me try this.
There we go. Should be coming up there. Perfect. Okay.
Have you testified before this board in the past?
I have. It's been a while.
And your license is current and good standing this evening?
Yes.
And maybe just remind the board of your just your credentials a little bit, school and years of practice.
Sure. I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey. Been practicing since 2007.
Does the board accept Andre's qualifications?
We do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Why don't you walk us through the plans?
Okay, great. So this home is on the corner of 8th Street in Monmouth. I suspect many of you have seen it through the years. It's been in pretty bad disrepair for a while. And we purchased it about 1.5 years ago. The intent is to do a pretty comprehensive and loyal sort of restoration here to make it align better with the rest of the street. Most of the homes have been, or many of the homes are in good condition there, and we did do one home there a couple of years ago on the same street. So from a use point of view, it's a two-family currently, and it'll be a one-family. Okay, it's a small home. You know, we're not proposing any enlargement of any kind. Really, the time that we've spent with Michael and Maggie the last few months has been focused around getting the right design language in place to be consistent with what is historically appropriate. So just some close-up photos of the existing conditions. It's all really, you know, it doesn't seem like there's going to be much to maintain. We'll see once we remove this aluminum cap that's on the cornice, what might be hiding behind there. But there's a lot of water damage throughout and at the inside also. The previous owner wasn't able to keep it up, it didn't seem, for a long time. So, these are all the existing sort of condition photos. We had initially, when we submitted the initial filings, kind of been modeling the restoration modeled off of the home directly across the street on the other corner, although I think we were steered a little bit away from that in some ways because it wasn't, accurate. So hopefully we've gotten closer to what we're supposed to do here. From a site plan point of view, if I go there, here sort of we see the existing site plan on the top of the page and the proposed. I think one of the key things probably is that we'd like to have a roof deck here atop the garage. There is no green space on the property, outdoor space, so just to make it a usable space for the new users. And we're aware that there are to be no visible elements from the public right-of-way, so we're not proposing anything there that would, do so, encroach into that sight line. Okay. From a scale point of view, there's, again, we're not changing the scale, so the massing is the same. I would point out that the existing, sorry, let me make sure I'm looking at the right elevation. So the existing home immediately to our right, what I guess was 335.5/8, does have a one-story addition on there, and that is visible from public right away. And for a while we wondered about doing something there that would match that, and we were ultimately decided not to do that or to try for that. Okay, we did produce this colored illustration of what we're proposing to deploy here. There's a lot of site evidence, on the street with the ornamented porch detailing and the balustrade. From a material point of view, it's all intended to be wood, painted wood, and we're looking to expose that lower floor to the original brick, and nice mahogany door. And lesson learned from previous project, it'll be wood steps, even though I think, other materials might be more durable. But anyway, we're proposing to do that as wood steps. And all new wood windows. And let me just move to the detail sheets here. And here we spent a bit of time developing these details with Michael's help in terms of the language for the portico and all the other
For the garage.
garage recreations and so forth. Here's the lamps. And that would be a sort of a summary of what we're looking to do.
I'm going to walk around with the materials. There's a little heavy, so I can hold it if the bike or you can pass it around. So Andres, if you could maybe talk us through the material board. There's a question from the commissioners about why the surface on the wood is rough.
It is going to be smooth cedar siding. I think we just asked for cedar, and it won't be a rough finish siding.
Okay.
Yeah. We just asked for cedar. Sorry about that.
And the piece of of stone, what is that for?
That's bluestone. We had I think we were looking at the pavers on the rear deck at being some kind. You wouldn't see it, and then I did note in the conditions that were we to do any work within the areaway, we would have to work with you further. If we did do any work in the areaway, it would be bluestone as well. But the sidewalk is been recently done. It's all that that darker gray concrete finish.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So on the material board, you see the roofing material, the aluminum material for the the steel with the painted steel railing material would be at the front, and then the two tones of grays are just the corner gray is different than the horizontal siding. It's a little bit of a slightly different tone. I think the nice thing about the street over here is because there's so much different sort of tonality across the street, you could do something that's, you know, a little bit, there's a broader bandwidth from a color point of view.
On the open space above the garage, the usable terrace or whatever you're calling it, word's not coming to me, is that a knee wall in play there?
It would be railing height. So let me see if I can show a section that explains that.
I see it. Okay, that's what I needed to see, that there wasn't going to be a railing to, above that, and there isn't one, so I'm happy to see that. Thank you.
Could you just speak to the window configuration, because it appears to deviate from the 1937 tax photo?
So let's see. Maybe we'll walk around the building. Unless there was a specific facade you had in mind.
Yeah, the primary facade, I think you're proposing 2/2, and the photo looks like 4/4.
Let's see.
Or maybe I need my glasses.
So it's 2/2, right?
It looks like 2/2. Are the windows longer in the original photo? I was curious as whether any of these step down longer on the facades.
No.
The parlor level? it
They're at
looks
the
like.
floor, I think.
Oh, at the parlor level?
Yeah, at the parlor level.
Are you putting those down to the floor?
He's not planning
Not
to.
proposing that.
You look at the parting sash on the 38 photograph, on the two side-by-side buildings, you'll note they're in the same place, and you can clearly see that the parting sash on the adjacent building to the right goes to the deck of the.
Okay. Good catch. Had not noticed that. Is there a?
Andres, have you done any exploratory demolition on the outside of that area of the building?
Not well. I don't know. I haven't noticed this on the inside. There is some open wall on the inside. I could, but yeah, no. I see. I think Commissioner Sandkamp's point is probably true. I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Perhaps once you get into the construction, some more evidence may be revealed about the true dimensions of the windows and whether it was just covered over or filled in. And maybe that's something we could work with staff on as we get into it.
Right, we can just add that as a condition.
Okay. Yeah, well, right. It's a good point that just the side window at the corner doesn't appear to be full height, but yeah, the sash line is different.
You can see that it's actually a longer window on the porch, right?
Yeah, the sash matches, the windows match onto the house to the right. The sash is in the same place, and their windows do go to the porch.
Mm-hmm.
Am I the only one who sees brick in this photo?
There were brick asphalt shingles on the house. That's the street I grew up on, so I'm very familiar. It used to have those brick asphalt shingles.
Oh, wow. Oh, we wouldn't want that. Can you also speak to the east elevation? Sort of, I don't object to the addition of windows necessarily. I'm just wondering if you can sort of speak to how you decided the number and placement of them.
I think we did want to bring some order to that elevation. Let me see if I go to that sheet.
2. And it's not a 6.
I think there was only one in the original.
Are you right? I'm in only one right near the front
Okay,
there we
facade.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this is, on the bottom is the proposed, on the top is the existing.
Mm-hmm.
We did key off a bit from the house across the street in terms of the number of fenestration
Mm-hmm.
there, and I just want to sort of rationalize this. It is a nice, unique thing about corner buildings that you can have light on 3 sides. It's unusual for townhouses, but it is consistent with sort of the local vernacular for corner homes. It just improves the quality of the spaces at the inside, and I think it brings an order to the facade.
Completely. Out of those 6, how many are bedroom windows?
The bedrooms are on the top floor,
Mm-hmm.
the far right and the far left,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's one, two bedroom windows on the lower floor.
And then on the parlor.
The
level?
parlor is kitchen and living area.
Thank you.
Are you working with the existing openings on that facade, or are you altering the dimensions?
These 2 existing windows here, I guess where we had the E for existing, we're keeping that same dimension.
Okay.
And then that dictated how the other openings would be created.
Yeah, I only had the one. Andres, I had a question about the front facade and how the gutter is being addressed, the gutter and leader on the right side. Here we go.
So, am I looking? There we go. So
think
there,
you-
the main roof gutter at the main roof would discharge at the rear in the back,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the porch does need a downspout,
Right.
right?
I think you
So-
have it in your color rendering. You actually have the detail. Yeah. So is that off of
Yeah.
a Yankee
There we go.
gutter?
Right. Well, it's not a Yankee. My understanding of Yankee gutters is that they're concealed gutters. This is not a concealed gutter. So it would be, but we are putting it to the inside at the demising wall to the adjacent property as opposed to on the corner side because it's less visible on that side.
So is there a gutter across the front of the facade?
Oh, I see what you mean. It would be a surface mounted gutter. I see. So let me see if I would draw it. Right, you would see essentially a gutter like that, right?
Right, that
Yeah.
was my concern, is that I don't know how the other properties in the row are handling.
I don't know if they are
Are they
handling it.
also doing the same thing?
Everybody has surface-mounted
Okay.
gutters.
Okay. There you go, I have the expert right next
He,
to me.
he knows the street.
And each 2 houses share the roof gutter from the porch.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Want to review anything? Okay. Andres, is there anything else you want to add? Stephen?
No, thank you.
No, that concludes our direct testimony.
Okay.
If there are any members of the public present who would like to comment on this application, please approach the public comment mic. Staff sees no members of the public present and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moving on to staff comments. Staff finds the application to be mostly consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation. The facade restoration appears to be appropriate and consistent with the downtown historic district guidelines. The proposed window fenestration on the side and rear facades match existing pattern on the building, as well as are consistent with fenestration patterns seen really throughout the district, and in HPC staff's opinion will not cause an adverse effect. Additionally, the garage proposed alterations, including the slight addition and roof deck above the garage, appears to be consistent with the existing block paradigm and the development patterns of the area. The proposed roof deck is consistent with similar roof decks throughout the historic district. HPC staff notes that the curb cut is legal that leads into the driveway per a submitted letter from the zoning officer. In HPC staff's opinion, the project as proposed will not cause an adverse effect on the character or integrity of the historic resources or the Hamilton Park Historic District. So HPC staff recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness with the following conditions, one of which being added now: the applicant shall work with staff to adjust the front facade windows to match the historic evidence. And then most of the other conditions are standard conditions, except for the first three. We have that they will do all restoration work per the guidelines based by historic site evidence. That includes some exploratory demo, and that they shall notify HPC staff and schedule a site visit if necessary of any changes or differences to the approved plans at the time of exploratory demo. The second one is if any work is proposed for the front yard area except for the fence restoration, which is included in this application, an application for review will be submitted to the staff. That's because most of that outside of the property is actually outside of their property line, so that will require a franchise and stuff like that. The applicant shall submit window and door shop drawings to the HPC staff for review and approval prior to purchase, manufacture, and installation. And then the rest are just our standard conditions.
I have one last question, though. Will you be keeping the exterior garden space, and will you be planting any trees on the east side of the house? Any street trees?
It's all grass now.
Yeah.
I think the intent would be that it could be a nice planting area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no hardscape that we would propose there.
Great, thanks. That was it.
Also, on the garden level masonry, do you have any conditions for the mortar? That should be submitted, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's
color submission.
Yeah, so I think that's all covered by number 5, details, specifications, and material submissions not currently submitted to and approved by the HPC under this certificate of appropriateness or changed during the course of construction are remanded back to the HPC, and all that will be on their construction documents that we will review.
Great.
All right, so just for the record, the applicant is in receipt of the memorandum, the staff report dated September 13th, 2024. I believe there's 10 conditions of approval on there, which have been reviewed and accepted, plus the condition which we added this evening regarding enlarging the windows on the parlor level based on site evidence as we do some exploratory demolition. And those are acceptable to the applicant.
Okay, so once again, HPC staff recommends a motion to approve with the stated conditions. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with stated conditions.
Okay.
Second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Amazzuzo?
Aye.
Sandkamp?
Aye.
Sakong?
Aye, and I just want to make a note of saying thank you for the thoroughness of the application and the physical material boards. It was a very helpful and easy to follow
Thank you.
submission.
Commissioner Griga is absent. Commissioner Gunther is absent. And Commissioner Blazak is absent. Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gucciardo?
Aye.
And Chair Gordon?
Aye.
We have 6 in favor, 0 nays, 0 abstentions. This motion passes.
Thank you all.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right.
I'll now Call case H-23-0188. The applicant, again, Stephen Joseph, this time on behalf of 445 Jersey Avenue, SPE LLC, owner. The address is 445 Jersey Avenue in the Van Vorst Park Historic District. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness for the conversion of the former St. Mark's Church, an altered contributing building constructed in 1888, and rectory building into residential units with work including but not limited to site work, interior renovations, facade restoration, and second floor addition visible from the public right-of-way. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment.
All right, good evening, everyone. Stephen Joseph again for Castano Quigley Trami. 445 Jersey Avenue. This is exciting projects for the whole team to work on. We spent a lot of time on this, and we're going to be spending a lot of time on this. It's a house of worship. There's a accessory building to the house of worship, and it's being converted into apartment building, 10 dwelling units, approximately 23,600 square feet of gross floor area. This is a major site plan approval, and it also has a series of variances. There's a use variance, a rear yard setback variance, building coverage, lot coverage, and parking. Typically do see these sorts of variances with existing buildings, especially houses of worship being converted into residential. Will is here this evening to show you the plans, walk you through some of the choices that were made here, and get some of your feedback. So let's get Will sworn in.
Thanks, Steve.
Can you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you spell and state your name for the record, please?
Sure, it's William Weckenman. Last name is spelled Weckenmann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will, can you confirm your license is current and in good standing this evening?
Yes, it is.
And Will appeared before this board many times, and also very recently I would ask the board accept his qualifications.
Yep, so it's accepted. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thank you for your time this evening. Steve mentioned this is a really nice project, something that we're really excited about. And it's been a long road getting here, and we're definitely happy to be here tonight to present this project to you. As was previously mentioned, this is the adaptive reuse of the existing church building at 445 Jersey Avenue. For reference purposes, we have the tax photograph on the left, as well as a current photograph to the right. As you can see, much of the historic facade for both buildings is still intact. We do have some minor alterations to the window openings on the rectory building, as well as a replacement of the main entry door to the sanctuary. There's also a fence in front of the building, which is also not historic. It just gives you a little bit of context for the proposed improvements. I'll quickly just go through the existing and proposed site plan to explain a little bit about the project and how we're approaching this. The current building consists of 4 individual buildings or additions that were constructed over the years. The main sanctuary is almost 100% lot coverage in the middle of the block, which poses some interesting challenges because most houses of worship have large windows. They're easy to convert into apartments. But as you can see here, the buildings are right up against the adjacent townhouses, as well as the rectory building to the south. You'll notice that both buildings are also built right up to the rear property line. The rectory building consists of 3 components. There's a 3-story masonry building at the front of the property, which faces onto Jersey Avenue. And then there's also a 1.5-story, 2-story masonry building along the rear lot line. Sorry, apologies for keep hitting these by accident. And then the third segment of the building is this 1.5-story frame addition that connects both of those buildings. So what's also interesting is that these buildings don't have, there's no existing wall on the south property line. They're built right up against the neighboring building. So it's a little funky here in terms of how these buildings are constructed. Wow. So what we're proposing for the project is obviously our typical site improvements. We're replacing the sidewalk and enlarging the tree pits. We are also planning on installing some landscaping along the front of the building to serve as a buffer between the proposed residential units on the first floor and the street. The existing stairs and entrances along Jersey Avenue will be maintained, obviously. But what we're proposing for the rear of the building is actually taking off about, was it 12 feet? Yeah, a little over 12 feet, or one bay of the church to provide a rear yard for the project. And this serves a couple of different functions. One, it allows for windows on the rear of the church where there currently are none. So it allows us to have units facing the rear of the property. It also allows us to, there's an access easement that runs along the back of the property, and that's for egress purposes. So it allows that to be maintained and utilized as part of the completed project. And that extends, it's right here, it's this dashed line, and that extends across the neighboring property out to the street, out to Bright Street. For the the rectory building, we are proposing maintaining the front masonry portion of the building, and then removing the rear building as well as that addition that connects the two pieces. And then we are replacing that with a 4-story, I guess you could call it addition, but it's sort of a new construction. But as I mentioned, the historic, the front-facing section of the building will be preserved. These are just some of our standard details. I'll skip through these, but happy to go back if there's any questions on them. I'll also skip through the side-by-side comparison of the floor plans, because I'll touch on them in greater detail as we go. So starting with the basement, the building has an existing sort of a crawl space. It's about 4.5, 5 feet tall. It's filled with debris and construction waste, the usual kind of stuff that you would see dumped into a basement or a cellar of an older building. So the plan is to remove all of that and create a cellar level for the project. We have enough head height where we can turn this into, we can put all the utilities down there, as well as bike storage and some amenity spaces for the residents. And this is accessed through a small stair over here, which is existing. So we're going to reuse that entrance and provide access to the utility areas. So, as I mentioned previously, we are maintaining all of the existing door and window openings along the front of the church, as well as along the rectory building. But one of the sort of interesting things about this project is that we're using, instead of having the main access for the church, for the building be through the church, main entrance of the church, we're having it come through the vestry building. So and that's really a function of the way that the windows were working in the church. You'll notice that along the north property line, most of these windows there are no windows. So it made using that main entrance a little bit of a challenge when it came to laying out these units. So what we're going with for the sanctuary portion of the building is a front and a rear orientation. And then we have the main entrance to the side, on the side of the building here, which is accessed through a central courtyard, which connects out to the street. And then we have a stair at the center of the sanctuary that extends up to the upper floor units. The vestry building also has access off of that courtyard, so it's a similar configuration. The units are oriented to the front and the back with a central stair in the middle. There are 6 units in the church, and there are 4 units in the vestry building. All of these units are duplexes, while the units in the church, with the exception of the, sorry, I should say that it's a mix of units in the church. So on the ground floor, we have a duplex unit in the rear here. We have another duplex unit that faces the rear on this side, and then we have a single unit towards the front of the building. And these are large units, large living rooms, really nice living space. So moving on to the second floor, the configuration is similar. We have a unit in the front of the sanctuary. Again, nice large living room with these original windows here, which makes for a really nice, unique space. And then we have the upper level of both rear-facing units on the back here. And then in the vestry building or the rectory, we have the upper level of those duplex apartments. The footprint of the vestry building steps back as you go up, and that allows for some outdoor space for the units, as well as we have a number of lot line windows along the neighboring building that we're maintaining. So the building opens up as it gets taller, which is great for light and air purposes. This is the third floor plan. Again, the rectory building, vestry building as we're calling it, is the same configuration, duplex, lower level of the duplex front and back. But the third floor in the sanctuary is actually up in the roof. You'll see when we get to the elevations, most of the volume of this project is within the roof line of the building. So we're utilizing that at the third floor level. These 2 units also have, so how we're handling this is we're proposing dormers within the existing roof line. And that allows for us to set the volume of the living space back and minimize the impact of it visually, but also allows us to get additional windows and into these units. And these 2 units have private terraces on the side where the building steps back. Another interesting feature of these units is there's this it's a massive 3-story Gothic arch that we're keeping. In the rear, I don't actually know what it does, other than look really cool. I'm sure it serves some sort of structural purpose, but it's not completely clear when we did our survey. But we are keeping this and maintaining it so that top floor unit has this really cool, massive arch that separates the living room from the kitchen space. In the front of the building, it's functional. It supports the steeple at the front, but this also has a very large Gothic arch, which will separate the living space from the kitchen and the dining area. We are also using the bell tower or the steeple of the building as like a bonus space or a den for that front-facing unit, which I think, again, will also be a really cool, unique space within the building. And then adjacent to that, in the rectory or vestry building, we have the top floor of those duplex units. And this is taller than the existing building, so we've set this portion of the building back so that it won't be visible from the street. There is a very large, tall parapet that will remain, and that helps to block some of the views. I think you can see it on one of the sections, which I'll get to later. Again, I'm just going to skip through the side-by-side elevations. This is the primary facade. As I mentioned, all the window openings are existing. All the stained glass will remain. The only opening that we're modifying is the existing door opening of the rectory building, and we're basically just lowering that sill so that we can provide ADA access to those ground floor units. And we're also replacing it with a gate instead of a typical solid door here. So that'll be completely open. For the vestry building, we're proposing repointing all the brick and repairing the facade where required. We are also going to be replacing all the windows with 2/2 wood windows that match the historic configuration. And as you can see here, this is the addition, which is set back from the parapet. For the church itself, there are existing. These door openings have the original wood frames and original leaded glass windows, which will be remaining. We are replacing the doors with a new wooden door with a window. Again, that's a bedroom on the interior, so we're proposing a glass door here just to get some additional light into that apartment. Same thing on the opposite side. For the even though the main entry door has been replaced with a storefront, the existing wood is still present, so we're going to keep that, repair it, and then provide, again, matching doors that follow the historic openings. For the stained glass windows, which are remaining, we are proposing an aluminum window as a thermal window here, and to serve as protection for the stained glass. Typically, we would probably recommend, we would specify a wood window, but in this case, there's no existing wood frame around these windows. They're set directly within the masonry. So we felt that introducing a wood frame for those windows would be introducing a new material that wasn't historically there. These aluminum windows are also extremely thin. The profiles are extremely thin, and these are all custom made to match the opening size. So again, compared to a wood window, it's about 1/3 of the thickness for the frame. So, and I'll show a photograph of these windows on a later slide, but we felt it was a better match for this particular building. So moving on to the rear elevation, one of the things that we wanted to do with the design of the rear of the building was to accentuate that cut, that intervention that we're making by removing the back section of the building. So what we're proposing is a thick aluminum frame that extends around the perimeter of the facade. It sort of frames the glass opening, but it also, again, serves to accentuate the fact that this building was cut and this section of the back of the building was removed. So a lot of glass on this project, but it's something that relates to, at least especially for the church building, relates to what we're doing architecturally. This is the rear of the vestry building, the addition, and again, it follows that same language. Although instead of framing it with an aluminum frame, we're using a masonry brick as the complementing material. You can also see the outline of the dormers that I spoke about. They're fairly minimal. It's a little bit hard to tell in this drawing, but they are set back from the roof edge. So this is the side elevation of the church, the south elevation. So this is cut through. There's interesting cutting sections through this. This is cut through the building to show what the exposed areas of the south facade, how they will be treated. So this is also this is really the only new masonry opening that we're proposing on either the side elevations or the front elevation. And it's just to serve as the main entrance to the building. We are proposing wood windows for the existing side windows. And we've gone with a more traditional style with regards to how the divided lights and how those windows are working. In a couple of areas too, we also have some outdoor terraces, and we're providing French doors to access those balconies. The addition at the roof level, the new dormers that we're proposing are fairly simple. We're using kind of a board and batten design here for the panels themselves, and then we have a rectilinear window, repeating window across the side. And the idea here was to do something that kind of mimics what you would see on the side wall of a church, where there's individual openings that are more vertically oriented. But just done on a smaller scale. So you could take this window, let's say, and then divide it in two, and so the scale of the windows at the dormer is sort of reflective of the proportions of what's happening down below. Same thing is happening on the north side. That's a little bit simpler because we don't have the addition. Again, all these windows are existing. We're just replacing them with new wood windows, and then the design of the dormer is the same as on the south side. And you can see how this is situated with respect to the front facade and the rear facade. So it's pulled back roughly to the level of the rear of the steeple here. And again, it's just kind of to reduce the bulk of this addition when you see it from the street, and also to kind of sort of works well with the way that the living spaces are designed. So here we have a sightline drawing. This is taken at a slightly different, this is cut at a slightly different location than the previous elevation. So this looks a little funny because of how, because of where the cut is in plan. So, but this is the rear addition, and then this volume here is the front addition at the vestry building. And again, just a sight line to see how the proposed fourth floor is working in relation to the existing parapet and its visibility from across the street. And this is on the opposite side of the building, looking south. So similar exercise, again, just to show how the visibility of these dormers in relation to the street. It will be visible. It's just the nature of how these buildings, the height of the adjacent buildings relative to the height of this building. But we took efforts to minimize that, so it's obliquely visible. And then finally, we have our material page here, showcasing our window colors, the proposed windows, the bricks, as well as the color for the wood material on the front elevation. Here are our typical window details. And what I'll highlight here is this is what we're proposing for the stained glass. This is a little bit, this is a much larger window than what we have on this project. But what you can see here is that the sight lines of the frame are very small. I mean, it's almost invisible. So again, this is why we went with an aluminum window as compared to a wood window in this instance. And finally, we have our proposed rendering. It's a little bit, we eliminated the trees so you could see the building a little bit more clearly. We also didn't model all the power lines and everything in front of the building. But it gives you a sense of what the addition will look like relative to the front facade, as well as a little bit more information on, how this will look at the street level. So that concludes my testimony. Happy to answer any questions and go through this.
You've talked a lot about materials. One question that was standing out for me is how are you dealing with the roof materials? Are you replacing the roof on the project?
Yeah, the roof is it's currently an asphalt composition shingle, and we're going to be replacing it with a same material.
And there's a steeple at the front. How are you addressing that?
Same thing. The whole roof has asphalt shingles currently.
What might it have had in its original condition? Because I have a concern about that steeple being covered in asphalt shingle. It doesn't seem appropriate.
Sure. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I don't know what would have been there.
Probably slate.
Slate.
Yeah, and likewise, since you're indicating that your dormers are going to be seen from the public right of way, I also have concerns about the materials that will be used on those if indeed the commission accepts that structure.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we would agree to use a slate or a slate. And there's a number of different products out there that look like slate. I think we would be agreeable to changing the material for the roof.
Would you consider reducing the size of the dormers further back from the from the front facade so that they'd be less visible?
Sure, let me go back up to the plan.
Or not visible at all, which would be ideal?
Yeah. We do have a little bit of wiggle room to reduce that.
It seems like that from the quick review of the floor plans and what you're trying to accomplish. It looks like you might have the ability to get them out of the public view.
Sure, we can look and see what that would look like and how it affects that top floor plan.
And on the public view discussion, what about other parts of the street? Is any of your project visible from anywhere else other than from the front facade?
Sure, let me go to the. So it will be visible, further down Jersey Avenue in either direction. Well, as you go towards to the north, and it's just a function of the fact that this building is taller than the surrounding buildings. So the roof will be visible.
And also from York Street, is that can you see through from the south side of York Street? It looks like that's open yards
That's
to
right.
the project.
Yep, it will be visible through the rear yards on York Street.
So, as a commissioner, I would like to see those views. That the one you mentioned from further down the street, and then also what you'd be seeing from York Street.
Sure.
Just dovetailing off of Commissioner Gucciardo's comments, generally, we as a commission have said that, especially on adaptive reuse like this, if it's not visible from the primary facade from directly in front, there are many applications that you could find, if you look historically, that this commission have approved that had obliquely visible additions. But primary, no. Not from the primary facade directly in front of it.
Sure.
And then I think also, as Commissioner Gucciardo said, I'd like to see appropriate material on there. And it may be metal. It doesn't have to be synthetic slate. It could be a metal material.
Sure. We'll do a little bit of research on the roof and
Also, the treatment of I would call it a rose window or oriel window. I just wanted to know a little bit more about that. And then I noted the louvers on the tower. It appears you're maintaining them. Are they going to be operative? Are they going to be hinged out so that someone there can operate them? Or
No.
are they're going to be fixed?
these louvers they're existing, they're going to remain. What we're
Okay.
proposing is putting a window behind the louvers, fixed window behind the louvers. So as far as views,
Then the other question was the rose window?
yeah. So again, we're treating it the same way as the lower windows. The only difference is it has this metal grill in front of the window. So we will just put the protective window in front of that.
And is that was historic? That was original? That grid?
It's hard to tell.
See here if I have it.
Yeah, what is that?
Maybe, yeah.
So I guess Dan had indicated in a prior meeting with the client before we came onto the project that those grills were not original. So yeah, we could certainly remove them if that's the preference.
If it looks like that it's not historic, I think Dan would be the person to find out. The other question was the treatment of, I'm going to say, the residual foundation where you've removed the back of the building. Can you talk about that a little bit, what you're going to do there? Because I think it might be more appropriate to leave some of that foundation so future researchers can see, aha, this is where the building was.
Interesting. We were planning on removing it in its entirety, but
I mean, as much as you're using it as egress, right?
But
In something that doesn't impede egress, but still maintains some sort of evidentiary kind of aspect to the building at that, where that's been modified.
that's I didn't even think of that. That's actually a really interesting idea, especially because we're proposing a fence around the perimeter, so it's a no-brainer.
It could be the base of your fence.
Yeah.
Right,
Maybe cap it.
yeah.
Yeah, the client really likes this idea and has some thoughts about how
Great
to
idea.
treat this. So.
I just want to say that, typically my instinct is always sort of to protect historic materials and fabric, but I just want to take a moment to commend the applicant for sort of a pretty ingenious reimagination of the structure. I think especially it's, the sort of entrance from the side through the vestry building, not kind of sticking with the nave partie. And kind of slicing off the back, even though it, I struggled with it at first. It seems to me a very creative solution, especially if there is a way to kind of have remnants of the original structure kind of remain and legible. I have a couple comments and questions with that said that I think can improve the design. So first of all, the dormers, I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think the less visible those dormers are from the public right of way, I think the better. I think the materiality, the fiber cement boards feel off, but not just the materiality. I think the design language on them seem inappropriate as well, right? That you have this kind of like batten language, and it somehow doesn't. I don't think it does honor to the structure of stone and heavy masonry that the rest of the building sort of evokes. Typically, also when you have elements like that in traditional buildings, there's a very strong sort of geometric and order relationship between the clerestory openings and the larger openings below. Right now, your two lines of windows don't even align to each other, let alone to the big windows below. And I think there's just like one more study of order and alignments and sort of geometric rigor that I think could really bring those dormers into a more, I would say, acceptable configuration.
That's a good comment. In terms of materiality, do you have any?
I don't.
Okay.
But I would suggest to you that somehow the fiber cement and batten language evokes something more like wood, and I think either it wants to be, modern like the rear slice, or something more deferential. Some language of slate seems appropriate, but I don't want to kind of design by commission, right? Like I want to just note my discomfort with how those dormers are designed right now. I also have a sort of question about the insertion of these aluminum glass protective layers in front of the stained glass. It looked from the drawings that those the stained glass remains, and then you have sort of the aluminum window in front. But when these are bedroom windows, don't those windows have to be operable?
Interestingly, no, they don't. With the changes to the building code that have happened last year, these buildings are required to be mechanically ventilated.
Got it. So you don't have to open the window.
Right, correct. So there's this requirement for mechanical ventilation that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. That's fortuitous. The one, I will say the one thing that I'm not saying I'm rejecting it or anything, but something that again kind of I get caught on is when you bring forward the plane of glass, as thin as it may be, you're shortening the depth of shadow in the reading of the masonry opening. And especially if it's just kind of like a single light of glass in front of what is normally a very textured, modeled, uneven stained glass plane, it further flattens the reading, right?
Sure.
So I don't know what the solution is, but that's just one of those things that I'm not as comfortable with either. And maybe finally, in the rear facade, like I said, I think the reading of the architectural section is a smart one, right? It kind of maximizes glass in a otherwise constricted area. But the thing that muddies that is these projecting balconies that I think returns it back to a more conventional modern building language, as opposed to, because what you're trying to go for is, this is not a, you're not trying to say this is a modern building. You're trying to say this is what you get when you cut an old building, right? And I think the cleaner that plane, the fewer ins and outs and the fewer balconies. I mean, the upper bedrooms have the dormer balcony, so you don't need them. And I think the lower ones too, if it's possible to eliminate them and really just make that read as a clean plane. I think in fact, if you could even align the back of the vestry building, right, so that it aligns with the back of the church, again, kind of to reinforce the cut idea. I think that would strengthen the design move.
Yeah.
And
I agree with
have fewer distracting elements.
I think that's a good comment. We have no issue with removing the balconies.
Anyway, I'll let my fellow commissioners weigh in.
It's a lot to digest, and there's I would concur with a lot of what Commissioner Sakong said. What is the color of the back of that building where the slice is made and all that glass? I wasn't even sure from your drawings what was glass and what wasn't. Because of the way it was rendered, it was hard to tell. So could we review that a little bit further?
Sure. I think we'd be happy to provide a colored elevation of that or rendering or something that helps illustrate this idea a little bit more clearly.
Because I think what you might be hearing here is kind of more of a simplification of everything that you're doing to the building so that it's more cohesive. It seems like there's a lot of different materials and a lot of different approaches, and that often with historic buildings shows up as distractions and things that really don't need to be there. So if there's some way you can reduce the language of all those to something that's more common with each other, I think that would be helpful, especially on the dormers. I think the comments that were made are correct. And I would suggest that they not be seen at all. It shouldn't be minimized, but you have the opportunity. There's no reason why they should be seen. So why not hold to that? Thank you. You have the rear facade up. So is that glass from one side to the other straight across with some operating doors where you have balconies, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, I have that now. That's
And then right now we have this as like a black or a gray for the cut. But admittedly, color is one of those things that's why I'm not an interior designer. So if there's any comments on the color, we're certainly happy to.
Again, with Commissioner Sakong said, if it could read the color of the glass so that it feels like it's a slice and not this bordered shape around the glass in another color. I know that's not easy to do because glass is reflective and all that, but
Sure.
But it's something that I would study that to get that modern effect off the back of the building.
Sure. I think that we can discuss that. I think that there's going to be, just because of the thickness of the wall, as well as the thickness of the roof assembly, that this is going to be a somewhat substantial
For sure.
frame, if you will. So I don't know if glass, doing it to match the glass would work, but we could certainly look at it. I think that from a architectural standpoint, that there's really two things happening here. There's the cut, which is the thicker panel, and then there's the infill, which is the glass.
Right. Understood.
So I think we're trying to highlight both of those.
Right. And-
But that being
But
said,
that's right now metal and it's in segmented panels, right?
Yeah.
That goes around. Yeah. Well, again, I don't want to get into designing it, but I think it deserves, it's a major architectural treatment on the building and it probably deserves a really excellent solution.
sure. And like I said, I think if it's helpful to have a rendering or something so that you can see the depth of this, we could certainly provide that.
That would be helpful. And the south facade where you have all those, I think they were arched windows and they had multiple panes. I mean, as many as 12 or 15 panes. I think you're dividing the lights to that degree. Are those divided lights or are those simulated divided lights or? I know these are not on the facade, so you have a lot of leeway. We're just curious how you're dealing with it.
I mean, typically we would do a
think-
simulated divided light.
Simulated divided light,
With a spacer bar.
right,
Wouldn't be a true divided light.
right. Expected that.
On the first floor, does Unit 5, Bedroom 2 have a window?
5. Yeah, so these bedrooms have the doors, the side doors to the church are in those bedrooms.
So, okay, so no natural source of light in there?
Well, there's glazing within the door that we're
I see.
proposing. That's one of the reasons why we went back and forth with a few times on the design of the door with Dan and whether or not glass was appropriate. But given that this is a bedroom, that their living space is behind there, it would be really difficult to have these rooms with no glazing.
So is the yard that's open from above?
Yes. Go back to the site plan.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, it's the tower sticks out from the main sanctuary a little bit. So those yards are the space between the property line and the step back.
I see, okay. So that's the door to the street, okay. And I don't know if you may have addressed this earlier, that sign on the front facade, the church sign, is that, I didn't see it on the existing elevation drawing, is that consigned to the scrap heap? I don't know if it doesn't look like something that has historic value, but it's just curious.
No, I think we would remove it. Perhaps there's a creative way to
Yeah, it's not
repurpose
a
it.
part of the historic
Scrap
part of
heap.
it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for about the rectory building Gothic style windows. In your rendering, they show as red, but it looks like they are squares in the Gothic shape. Square windows, red square windows. In your drawing of the completed project.
We would do Gothic arches to match the profile of the window openings.
Okay, because the rendering shows squares in the opening.
Let me just make sure. I mean, that's our intention. Let me just make sure it's shown correctly.
Oh.
Yeah, these are okay. Yeah, these are. It might be an issue with the way it's reading, but the intention is to do a Gothic arch.
And the additional floor, is also visible from the public right-of-way, correct?
It's not from.
Not from
across
directly
the
in
street,
front.
Right. But again, it's because of the way that the buildings are situated and the step back that you would see it slightly from over here. But as you can see, the mass of it, the roof line is hidden behind the parapet.
Again, I would be, and what is the material that's covering the part that's seen from the public right-of-way?
It's fiber cement. Again, the additions are done with this same fiber cement material. But if we're going to be looking at a different material or articulation for this, then we'll apply it to that addition as well.
Okay,
So it's
great.
consistent.
I think that would be helpful.
Where are the mechanical units going? Assuming you have condensers.
Yeah, we have them sort of placed along the roof.
Divide or something.
Steve, do you guys need a minute? Because we are technically around the time where we would normally take a break.
No.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, no.
Just wanted to ask.
Sorry, could you point out where the mechanical units would go?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we have them sort of scattered throughout the project. They're on the roof areas, concealed by the parapets. A couple of them will be in the rear yard for those back units.
Can you point them out in plan?
Yeah. So the units for
For the Vestra building, yeah?
Yeah, this is only a three-story section here, so all of that equipment will be tucked in
Yeah.
back behind there. The other units, we have them on the terraces that are off of the individual units. And then we also have some in the rear yard. I don't believe they're all shown here.
I see. So can you just confirm that none of them are going on any church roof surface or dormer roof surface?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Or in any front yard.
Or in any front yard, importantly, yes.
Can you tell me the condition of the stained glass windows?
They're in fair condition. They seem to be, they're all intact, so we're not dealing with a situation where there's a large number of missing windows or missing panes. There's a ton of paint on them. We haven't done a full assessment of the windows. We just, with the nature
The
of the
reason I'm
process.
asking is because I see that the current state, they have protective, probably, what's the word I'm looking for? Acrylic, plexiglass in front of them. And one of my clients is a stained glass restoration person who restores most of the stained glass windows in all the churches in Manhattan and Brooklyn. He gets some of the top jobs in the area. And he said one of the main reasons for the stained glass windows failing is because they've got plexiglass in front of them.
Yeah.
And the heat that gets trapped in between causes the lead to start deflecting because it can't withstand the heat that gets trapped in that little space.
Sure.
So that was the reason why I'm asking if there was some other, potentially putting the protective or glass behind so that the stained glass is open to the elements the way it was intended to be.
Yeah, I mean, we could change the position of the protective glazing. In fact, it might not be a bad idea to protect it on the inside. I will say, though, that the windows that we're specifying, they have ventilation built in for that reason.
Oh, good.
So,
But there were other issues that were raised about it being on the outside. It takes it and creates this flat plane. It's reflective. You really don't really see the detail of the stained glass. It might be a good option, and it is a practice in historic structures to put these insulator panels on the inside.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, we could certainly accommodate that.
We've thrown out a lot of ideas here.
I'm writing them down.
How do we track them and want to make sure which ones you're good with and which ones you're not? Okay, good. Thank you, Maggie.
Well, I think they all.
Notes as well. So.
I feel like I'm back in architecture school. So, it's all good.
I mean, I think they point towards all these comments, at least in my mind, point towards a very exciting project.
It's
that
no
that
doubt
you know,
about it.
I'm.
No, I think
Great.
all the comments were reasonable and were all good suggestions, so, we have no problem going back and spending some more time on these areas. So,
And come and visit us again?
yes, absolutely.
Before the applicant steps away and goes back and everything and we carry this, I do just want to confirm that because we've given the applicant a ton of notes and changes for features on the building and how they're addressing certain things, but this is a use variance to the zoning board. I do want to confirm before we send them back and do all of this work that this is not like, I'm not doing a straw poll. I just want to confirm that the general consensus is that we are okay with the proposed use of this building before we send them back.
We
Absolutely.
can find a way forward, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it would be good to hear what the variances are, though. just so
Okay.
we
I think they
understand
can
what
run
they
through
are.
that quickly.
So, Steve,
Sure.
may as well give you something to do.
Yeah, so we do have a use variance here. What's technically permitted is a townhouse. What we're proposing is a multifamily, so it is residential, but it's technically not a townhouse. We are also proposing a rear yard setback variance. That's due to the nature of, we have an existing building, and we are modifying that. There is some demolition of the rectory building, so that does create a little bit of a discrepancy, but it's largely existing. So 30 feet's required. We have 12.17 feet.
Right.
We have existing non-conforming height. There's a bunch of different heights with this building. Obviously, the tower is far above what is permitted in the zone. Building coverage and lot coverage, both existing non-conforming. What we have being proposed is 81%, 60% is what's permitted. Existing is more though, so there's 96.4% is currently existing for building coverage. We're reducing that, so it's closer.
So most of the variances are existing already in the condition of the building. It's not that you're asking for variances in addition that are increasing the density or the height or any of that.
That's
right?
correct, with the exception of the use variance.
Right.
They're all existing.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a parking variance. Parking would be,
We didn't talk about the parking at all. How is that being accomplished?
we're not able to provide
You're not,
parking.
and you have 9 units?
10 units.
It's because you have 10 that you're required to parking, right?
Correct. Yeah, and it's half the space per unit.
Right.
And we see this often, whether it's in a historic district or adaptive reuse in a non-historic district. You have an existing building that you want to preserve, you can't put the parking on site. And even if it was off-site, it would still be a variance.
Right.
Understood.
Okay. All right.
The only other thing I'll say is that the density is actually, even though we're asking for the use variance, the density is below what's permitted. So we're allowed 14 units here, we're only doing 10. So,
Yeah, if you calculate it as units per acre, then that's.
Understood. Thank you for that review.
So this is going before zoning before it would return to us?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
just didn't
we've
want to
given
go
the
through the
applicant a laundry list of items that we would like to see revised. So I would recommend that we carry this to the next HPC meeting. And then the applicant will work on addressing all of those items. It'll come back to us before we make a recommendation to zoning board. Same as usual for most, any of our zoning board applications.
I'll make that motion.
I'm sorry, do we want to open to public? I'm not sure if anybody's here for this, just in case
We
there's any
can,
additional
yeah.
comments.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak regarding this application? Okay, staff sees no members of the public and recommends a motion to open and close public. comment.
Motion. Second.
I'm going to revisit. I'll make the motion to carry to the next regularly scheduled.
Hold on. All in favor to open and close public comment?
Aye.
Okay. Got you for the motion.
Okay.
Anyone want a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds good. And with that, it's right around the time where we take a break. So I would recommend that we take a short break before we finish out the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It is 8:18, like 8:22, 8:23, 5 minutes. Are you good with that?
Yep.
Okay.
We're down with that.
I am ready if you guys are all ready.
I'm ready already.
Okay. Want to call us back to order?
All right, and call the meeting back to order. It's 8:24. And moving to...
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me just do tabled cases because that is in the way of the demos. Huh, I always forget about those. All right. So I have met with the people from Temple Beth El. They they have retained a structural engineer. They're working through some calculations, and they are going to be back before the HPC either next meeting or the meeting after. It depends on how much space I have on that October meeting. And then the one on the other one on Kennedy, that new construction finally set a date to meet with the community. So hopefully that community meeting goes well, and they will also be on the October meeting pending space. And that's the update on table cases.
Okay, so moving to demolition review, we're taking these out of order. Was it 223?
Yeah.
We're going to first move to 223 Palisade Avenue, which is B-24-1034.
Okay. So 223 Palisade Avenue. I have this up on Google Maps just for us all to locate ourselves. We are on the southern end of Palisade Avenue. You can see we are just north of Christ Hospital, in between Waverly and Jefferson. This is the exterior of the building. It's a 3.5-story mansard roofed building. The original porch intact. When you review the demo review, so this building is in our master plan inventory. It is individually listed in the inventory. It's also mentioned in the phase 1 survey, where they discuss not only the intact elements on the building, but also the mansard shape in this case. I'm going to bring up that front building. We don't typically see a mansard A of this slope, B of the single window in the front. Most of the mansards in Jersey City that we're used to, and I lost my second photo here, are like the guy next door, right, where you have the double windows. So it highlighted a couple of unique architectural features in addition to being in the master plan. Here is the 1938 tax card photo. Right. Right, where you can see the porch intact. We did lose that upper cornice, but aside from that, the general design is intact. We have materiality intact, locations intact, setting is intact. So we do recommend that the board recommend denial to the zoning officer. Are there any questions from any commissioners?
You're the applicants for this? Just thought you just wanted to hang around.
I mean, at this point, it's a typical Monday night for these guys. Any questions from commissioners before I turn it over?
Yeah,
to...
is this a solid brick building, Maggie? It looks like I see brick on the side, the little side profile that's sticking out, but
So, yes, it is.
it is brick.
Right? On the 38 tax card, foundation is listed as brick, walls are listed as brick. Obviously, the building, like, it's these tax card photos are the bane of my existence sometimes. It is difficult to tell if this was stuccoed at some point in this tax card photo, but you are correct, Paul, that it is a masonry building.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Bless you.
We do have an applicant here to present, so we can hear from the applicant.
Stephen Joseph of Castano Quigley Trami for the applicant. So I'm here this evening to give you a little bit of context about what's going on. Obviously, the owner of the property wants to demolish the building. That's why he submitted a demo application. Was caught a little off guard by the recommendation to deny the demo. And I just want to give some context with that. You're going to hear from Will a little bit about his thoughts on the building. And in the event you approve the demo denial, we would also ask that you give a little leeway to staff to work with the applicant on development of the site and possible creative solutions to this. So the applicant here owns all 5 of the properties on this block frontage on Palisade. It is 5 separate properties, formerly, I believe, in the R1 zone that was recently, in the last zoning change, was rezoned to the RC2, which permits 5 stories. Of course, the applicant's luck, the one building that was denied demo is right in the middle of the entire site. So completely scraps the plans for full redevelopment of the area. It's again, something that is not ideal. The applicant is exploring different options here in terms of working with the building, but because of the roof line and the porch and the location on the lot, it does make redevelopment here very challenging. Let's hear from Will about his thoughts on the building and about some of the adjacent buildings, and then we'll go over to Maggie.
Before we get to that, I want to make sure I'm understanding. So the demolition was approved of the neighboring buildings, including others with mansard roofs that
Yes.
they just didn't have. They just had the standard double dormers. So
Less intact, yeah.
less
So-
intact.
Right, so the staff reasoning behind this is that the building in question 223 has historic site evidence like intact, like right, that porch is intact and the roof shape and window location are distinctive, whereas the building adjacent to this one, 225, which we did approve, it was the example I showed with the double window, did not have any historic fabric that was visible, right? I am sure it's there, right? But it's covered, and we do things only by what is visible from the public right-of-way for demos. And it's a roof shape and building type that we see throughout the city, and there are better preserved examples of it, not only throughout the city, but also within the Heights. So we approved that building for demo. And off the top of my head, I cannot tell you if we did the other ones, but I'm going to go ahead and, Michael's telling me that we have, which is great. So only this one in the middle of the site.
So the other buildings have been approved for demolition, and this one has not.
Correct.
Remind me what you said. I think you mentioned the porch. Is there other historic fabric that you see on this building and not the neighboring building? What do you have in mind?
So in this case, the design of the building is intact, right? So we have the entrance to how you physically enter the building, the window fenestration, inclusive of the roof shape, the chimney locations, all of that is intact on this building. We also have the historic fabric that's on the porch. We have the setting is intact, the location is intact. You have materials and workmanship with that porch. And I really try to avoid using the feeling one, right? Because that's the one that's ambiguous, but it's the combination of all of these elements giving a sense of history to the building, right? That's the definition of it, but objectively it doesn't matter. And to our knowledge, no one associated with history lived here. So that one's tossed out.
Commissioners, I would encourage you to have your discussion about the application on the record.
Thank you. I plan to do so. Just getting clarity. What
Right.
that was getting clarity of what buildings are on the block that have already been approved for demolition, we were reviewing those images of those buildings to understand the context of what we were looking at.
Are there any other questions, or should Will jump in?
Just to continue on this note, so I think the neighboring one is 225, you said. Did that originally had a porch instead of, it's
Yeah.
blocked by some shrubbery or
Yeah,
trees?
but that's all enclosed now. The fenestration has changed how you enter that, but like, there's more intact on this building. right?
Okay.
And I do, while the entire context is important here, I do want to remind the commission we are considering one building, right? Part of that consideration is considering the setting, right? But that is one element of consideration. It is important in this case, but one element.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
All right, well, you've been previously sworn this evening. You remain under oath. And just confirm that you understand that for
Yes.
the record.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
All right, so,
William Weckenman. Yeah, I don't actually have a whole lot to add here. We don't necessarily disagree with anything that Maggie said about the intact fabric of the building itself. We inspected the building on September 12th of last week. We conducted a site visit with the owner, as well as his colorful super who lives next door. And we looked at the front of the building, the porch, as well as the rear yard. Generally speaking, the building is in average to poor condition. Much of the masonry, especially on the side walls, is in poor shape, requiring substantial repointing and replacement. Many of the surviving decorative elements that were referenced in the memo are also heavily deteriorated. The column capitals, the decorative cornice at the porch level, as well as the brackets. Interesting to note is that this building was in the 1984 historical survey, but many of the features that were outlined in the survey have since been lost. That includes the 2/2 sash windows, the original porch columns, the railings, the stairs, as well as the bracketed cornice at the roof line. You can see that these elements were intact in the 74 tax photo, and apparently they are in 1984. They have since been lost. So, really we're talking about the facade, the fenestration, the mansard roof, and the porch. One thing that I'll say about the porch is that while the form of the porch is intact, it seems to be similar size and footprint to what was there historically. The entire porch has been rebuilt, and that's everything from grade up to the fluted capitals at the columns. So everything below those column capitals has since been replaced, mostly with substandard materials such as plywood and brick that is incompatible with the existing historic masonry. And the porch has ceramic tile as its walking surface. So while we agree that the feel, the form of the porch is intact and reflective of the historic photo, it's really a poorly constructed replacement for what was there historically. Even some of the fluted capitals have been replaced with plywood. It's a little bit hard to see from the photo from the street, but some of those decorative elements have been replaced as well. So that's really, it's not really in great shape. That's really all I have to say about the front facade. I don't have, I mean, I could touch on the siding a little bit. The memo states that this building is heavily altered, and the historic integrity of the setting has diminished with the presence of modern intrusions in the immediate area. The report also says that any removal of 223 Palisade would negatively affect the historic character of Jersey City and the surrounding neighborhood. So again, looking at this on an individual basis, that is certainly an argument that can be made. But when you look at the change to the underlying zoning, change to higher density zone district as well as taller buildings, the historic paradigm on the block has been fundamentally altered as a result of these zoning changes. So when viewed through the context of the zoning and the the proposed plans for the existing building, removal of this one building will not have a substantial negative impact on the neighborhood at large, certainly not on this block in particular. So.
Yeah, this is a, this is a hard one. I think this is a, not a intentional situation that was created by anyone, just a bunch of factors that kind of came together. If this building is not demolished, the likely development scenario here is a 5-story building on either side of this home. That's what the zoning calls for. So it's challenging. Again, all I would ask if the board does adopt this memo is to give staff some leeway to work with the applicant.
Could you say that again?
I'm sorry. I said all I would ask the board if the memo is adopted is to give historic staff some leeway to work with the applicant on creative solutions.
Just to add to the mixes going on in everyone's head, as you all know, our standard resolution language, if the commission were to recommend denial of this, does include language that encourages the applicant and HPC staff to work together to incorporate the building into an appropriate development. That could mean the building itself into an appropriate development, or in a case like this, my first recommendation is typically relocation of the building within Jersey City, or
I thought.
right. Not always feasible. I don't know if the applicant has explored it. It's typically a very expensive option to explore. It's not actually as expensive as you think to physically do it, but the structural like that stuff is more expensive than you think. So it's just like that is one way to do it. It could be incorporated into a building, or the commission could say, I don't think there's enough here, and we're okay with this going, right? All are viable paths.
Yeah, we did explore some of those options, and Will could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we have engaged general contractors to provide pricing for the larger development. And obviously, when this came up, one of the first things we did was looked into the feasibility of relocating the building, which we feel is viable with the plans that we have for the proposed building. The estimates that we got were roughly $450,000 to $500,000 for the relocation. It was either $200,000 for the move, $250,000 for the foundation and site work, or the other way around. I can't remember offhand, but that's something that we did look into. I think if the board were to consider relocation, I don't think it would be realistic to simply move the building forward and then kind of incorporate it into the facade that looks really cheesy. And
You can say bad. No, it's hard with the mansard roof. It looks bad with the mansard roof.
yeah, particularly with this building, it's not like some of the more successful examples that we've seen throughout the city where it's, small, masonry building. This is very challenging. This would be a very challenging relocation.
Are you talking about creating one building on the length of the block?
That's the intention.
That's the plan,
is to-
right?
Yeah.
What would the building be for?
It would be a mixed-use building, so it would have below-grade parking, retail, commercial spaces on the first floor, and then residences above.
And 10% affordable.
10% affordable. And the proposal does have, it would be an as-of-right development, so we wouldn't be asking any variances
Right.
associated with it, so.
I will remind the commission that all of the decisions on demos are to be made by the standards in chapter 105-7 and not on any proposed uses for the property.
Right.
Right. It's simply informative part of the discussion. I have no problem with being part of the discussion, but
Understood.
liking or disliking a proposed use, regardless of if it's as of right, is not kosher to me.
I would agree that that's not a reason to accept or
Just
deny.
context for what's
No,
in front of us.
Correct.
that's all.
And this is the first time we've had an applicant coming here. I think it is a valid part of the conversation. I just want to remind everyone of the standards.
That's clear. Maggie, I have a couple questions for you. So
Yes.
the buildings that were approved for demolition to the left and to the right of this building, how did those approvals take place? And just so I don't remember, why didn't it come before the commission?
Because those buildings were evaluated to not have historic fabric on the building, and they were also not in the element of the master plan.
They were
Right.
So only this one building
Only
in
this
the
one
middle of the
is-
block was on the element of the master plan.
And this building was in the master plan because of its inclusion in that phase 1 survey. If it was individually identified as some community note from our community meetings on it, it was not listed as such. Doesn't mean that it wasn't, it just wasn't listed as such. However, any buildings that were individually brought up as part of community feedback are indicated as such on our internal notes.
So a question about that, if we were to approve the demolition of a building that was listed in the master plan.
That's fine.
It doesn't set any precedent for other buildings. It's not going to come back and bite us that we did something like that, right?
No. So if you guys were to approve this, right, of course I have a resolution that I prep just simply on the hopes of being able to sign it the same night and get it to them the next day. But you guys can add to a resolution, right? So if you guys are looking at this and you're saying, I think we want to approve this, but I want to be very clear on the reasons why, we can add to the resolution, right? You can say the building is in the master plan inventory because it's in the phase 1, but we found the differences between the phase 1 and the current condition to be so stark that we don't agree with the assessment, right? That's a perfectly reasonable thing to add, and that would cover any concerns that you have about this becoming a standard practice.
And the standard practice would be you're evaluating the building before you. And if the commission doesn't find any of these historical items or values, then that's what the commission finds.
Can we just take a moment to revisit this idea of relocation? Because that's kind of a new concept for me, the idea of putting the building out to pasture. When we look at the demo standard
Shooting it, I mean.
105.7, I mean, I think number one is location.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that seems to me as a last resort, preserving the building somewhere else would be better than losing it entirely, but it's not a good situation.
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to be.
Yeah,
make sure
no,
I was
you're 100%
understanding.
correct, right? Like, first of all, there's a reason that on almost every building in the city, with the exception of a handful, almost every single building in the city has integrity of location, right? Most people are not in the habit of moving buildings. It was something that was done a lot historically, really up until like the 1960s when they started just demolishing everything, right? For example, the oldest building in Jersey City is actually in Westfield because they moved it there. But it's not a practice that is commonly done because you lose that integrity of location. And it's also not particularly easy to do.
And even
It's-
if it were moved, not, sort of off location, but within the lot, it
You still need a
completely
new
changes
foundation.
the No, of course, but I'm responding to some of the speculations about being able to loop around it. I think it changing the site and setting of the building sort of eliminates the reason to do it.
Where are you putting it?
No,
Where is
yeah.
it going?
Well, that's, of course, the other element of
That's
this.
the other-
Again, guys, these are all reasons why this is not done very often.
So the other thing that's kind of driving me crazy a little bit is the buildings on either side of it were approved for demolition because there was no visible historic fabric. But from my personal perspective, the forms are there for the historic structures. And I wouldn't have expected that the buildings on either side would have been approved for demolition. So there's a little confusion for me there. And the applicant's architect has stated that although this one looks better, a lot of that fabric that we're seeing has been replaced by other materials. So it's really not, it may look a little better, but it's just as bad in some ways as the other two structures that were approved. So
Yeah, that's, this is
I-
all,
if we were in a position where those other two buildings were denied demolition, then we'd have three buildings together on Palisade Avenue that had a future, you know?
right?
So.
No, and this is again like very much in like the weeds of these demo conversations,
Yeah.
right? Like there is we have done our best to create this solution that applies to a bunch of buildings throughout the city, and it is not as black and white, right? It's not as simple as us sitting there and saying has historic fabric, does not have historic fabric, has historic, right? And that's why you have, is it in the master plan? Is it in the surveys? Does it reach these aspects of integrity? And that's all done on an evaluative basis based on the information we have at the time, right? So I was not aware at the time that the porch was a replacement when we made this evaluation. If we had known that, I don't know how we would have factored that in, right? There have been buildings where we know everything on that building is a replacement, right? And that it factors one way or the other.
So based on the testimony we've just heard, does that change your assessment?
I haven't seen the building, that part of the building in person to evaluate it myself, so I cannot tell you if it would change my assessment. But that is not the responsibility of the commission to, like that is not it. Will's testimony should not, like, me and Will don't need to sit here and argue back and forth on if we think it's original materials or not, right? That is something that you guys should take as testimony from the expert.
But if this were an application to restore the building or renovate the building or, do something else to it, and the question of the porch came up, and if the argument were posed, well, the porch wasn't, it's not original materials anyway, so we're proposing a completely different design, we wouldn't accept that argument. We would ask for the porch to be restored because the original form is still there and because it's the pathway towards restoration is possible. So in my mind, since we're not evaluating some hypothetical plan, we shouldn't be considering. I mean, I hear the applicants sort of plead to kind of allow leeway and all that, but we can't, in the question of demolition of this structure, we can't consider hypothetical alternatives that we don't have in front of us. So if we see the possibility for this building to be bettered than kind of the abuse it's taken over the years, and if we see that the structure of the building allows for that faithful restoration, I don't really see the black and white. I think this is a clear case to deny demolition. And just because neighboring buildings were held to a lower standard or, could have been saved but weren't, I think doesn't set the precedent to then also let this one go. I think, if anything, it makes more clear the need to save this last piece.
So just in response to that, I just want to keep in mind that this building's not in a historic district, right? So development plans, renovation plans for this building would not come before the board. We're just dealing with complete demolition here.
That's a fair point.
And just one question, maybe to advocate for my client a little bit. The company that does the initial research on these, they don't do site visits,
No.
right, Maggie?
Not unless it is specifically requested, but it is written in their contract that we have a fee allowance where if they felt it was necessary, they could. They did not request to do one for this building, and we did not request for them to come up and evaluate it. I will just expand on what Stephen said on this bill, not to, like dig my grave a little bit deeper, but this building's not in a historic district. So there is no requirement for the applicant to restore this building.
Right.
And furthermore, if their application is as of right for stuff on either side of the building, and they are not utilizing the retention and restoration of this building as positive criteria for a planning board application, I don't have any review, right? So if they're just building something on either side, there is no review. It's normal permitting process.
Right.
So denying it does not get, where I'm trying to get here is denying any building for demolition, not just this building, any building the HPC sees ever, does not guarantee restoration.
Of course.
We have not in this zone. We have built certain incentives into different zones throughout the city that are not the historic district to encourage preservation and adaptive reuse. But it is not guaranteed in any way, shape, or form.
So the memo that we have that's from staff and Hunter Research, this is based on a comparison of the 1938 photo and a more contemporary photo.
Mm-hmm. And also what's in the master plan element and what's in the phase 1 surveys, right?
And ultimately, this memo is making a recommendation for how the HPC should proceed. So I think my question would be, again, based on the experts' factual testimony, which we have no reason to doubt, I think, I accept that testimony. So I think it's worth asking if that you would revise the recommendation or assessment in light of that testimony.
I would likely revise the third paragraph where, sorry, my hair tie broke. I have to adjust this. Where we discuss what is intact on the building. The second paragraph where we discuss if the building is in the phase 1 survey and is in the inventory and everything like that, that it would stay intact. Additionally, the assessment of what retains integrity would mostly stay the same with the removal of the materials and workmanship standard. Right, so that would leave design, location, setting, and feeling intact. So that's 4 out of 7 for anyone keeping score. Not that we do not grade them on a rubric.
Location would remain intact, you're saying?
Well, in this particular case, yeah. We are not evaluating this on what could happen on the site.
Exactly.
And for what it's worth, that was simply just an option. They could say, we actually want to incorporate this. Or they could say we're going to develop on either side of it. Right. That is not first of all, it's not a decision that the HPC renders, nor is it a decision that staff has any role in either. The only time staff gets involved in these is if the applicant is saying, we got denied for demo, we want to restore the building. In order to restore the building as part of our project, we have these variances that we need positive criteria for, and we're going to use the preservation of this building as positive criteria. That is when the planning board says, let's bring in our on-staff expert in this.
Mm-hmm. It's a very unique situation. I really, really appreciate that everybody seems to be struggling with this a lot. And I think one thing that Maggie said is very true here is that in the new zoning, there was an incentive built in for a lot of these cases where building is historically significant. There's a bonus, but this particular block was upzoned to the point where that bonus doesn't matter. That's where my client's challenge feeling some pressure here. That's just further context and background.
Well, I mean, speaking for myself, I think my gut feeling was to be more sympathetic to the applicant, understanding how this particular site factors into the larger development plans, but I also feel that our role is to consider this specific property and, not to be willfully blind to the surrounding property, but also not to necessarily take that into account in evaluating whether this property is fit for demolition. So that doesn't make it any easier. But.
Was any of this discussed with the community? Were you at that phase yet?
No.
No. Usually you go before the community when you have a new project that you want to present.
We have, I wouldn't even describe them as concept plans. Typically, our first step is doing like a block plan of the site and then getting these demo determinations. Before client spends a lot of money with architects and engineers because this would be a major site plan, so a lot of professionals are needed before we meet with the community or even talk to the city about, we haven't even had a pre-application meeting about potential project here. The demo determinations were applied for.
Yeah.
So
The reason I'm asking, Joseph, is because in the past, the community up here, up where this is located, has been extremely protective of these types of buildings, and I just know that it could be cause you major problems down the road. So I was just curious. Because I know that the minute something goes out there, it's going to be all over the place, you know.
I would say that's not an expectation that we have of any of these demo applications, and they're strictly in a due diligence stage.
I was going to say, to put it where we are in this stage, right, is for the demolition application, they need the construction official to sign off, and the planning director needs to approve the construction official to sign off. And so we, the commission, you, are offering a recommendation to the planning director to sign off or not on the construction official, eventually issuing the construction permit. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's the process.
Yeah, I don't want it to appear that we intentionally didn't meet with a community group or something.
No,
We're just
that
very-
wasn't assumed.
Yeah.
You know, just some more observations, if I may. I know we're going on about this, but it's difficult for me to, I'm not sure where I am. You know, you could envision a project going the total opposite way. I mean, the difference between this building and the ones to either side, in my point of view, the forms are there. If these were in a historic district, we'd be looking to save all three of them.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it'd be a whole different context for how we're approaching this. This whole block could be developed as a historic set of buildings. It has the potential for that. So, you know, the developer could be looking at it that way. It has parking, it has this immense building on the corner, it has that's a conceivable development of the site. And it's almost like this, if we deny this approval of the demolition, it's almost like this building then wags the whole block in terms of what it should become. You know, that you can go the other way.
But we're not deciding on potential for the building.
Right.
I know guys.
No, I
you
know
are
that.
you are in our heads
Sorry.
every time we review. No, and I'm not chastising like you in particular.
that's
Like
okay.
this is quite literally the conversation that happens for every single demo application we get, right? And it's this internal struggle of like, oh, I know this person's having that conversation. I know why someone applied, but like that. It is quite literally, and I'm actually gonna put these side by side, right? That might help,
Yeah.
right? We are looking at the building and we are saying, is there enough intact on that building to say, no, you can't demolish that?
And the answer to that question in historically, what we've done already is yes, there's enough intact to deny the demolition. That's what's come before us before. That's clear.
Maggie, denying this demolition application doesn't pose any hurdles for the applicant for future plans that propose alterations or even significant partial demolition to the building were they to try to incorporate it into some future development.
No.
Not that we're considering the future development, but
No, it does not. Yes, this demo denial denies the application at hand, right? Denies they applied for a demo permit. We are saying, nope, we are denying we are a prior approval for that demo permit. So essentially, they are not getting their prior approvals, so the construction officer will not sign off on it because they don't have their prior approvals. It does not hinder the applicant from doing anything to the building in the future.
Right.
I mean, frankly, in a year, they could come back in with another demo application,
Right.
right? But it does not require them to come to HPC staff for anything. It does not, if they go to the zoning officer and say, hey, we want to take off the back half of this building and build a 5-story addition, we have no review over that, right?
Right.
It does not hinder anything like that. It does not make the building historic.
And to be clear, I don't think any of us are suggesting in any way that we would be amenable to any of that, right? We can't opine on that.
No,
but
we
but
cannot.
What I want, but what I wanted clarity on, which I got, thank you, was that this procedural, the procedure of denying this demolition doesn't hinder any future proposals.
No.
Well, I don't, if we're really struggling with making a decision, I hate to propose kicking another can down the road, but I wonder if it would be useful to have, because right now I just have the 2 photos up on the screen and it's not a whole lot to work with. Would it be helpful to have additional photos of some of the more significant elements that are visible from the public right of way because some of the things that are being described, the deterioration and the substandard materials are, at least not evident to me from the photo on the left.
So, excellent question. We happen to have some photos that Will took at his site visit late last week that we could enter as exhibits if that's okay with the board.
Sure. I think you will probably need this dongle, though. Well, yeah. Oh, okay.
Can you plug this directly in?
I also have a iPhone connection cord.
There we go.
And what? Yeah, it's a whole bunch of them. Not right now, but honestly, I probably. All right, cool. All right, how many photos are we entering into evidence?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6.
Six photographs of the subject property that were taken by the architect.
Okay, and we can mark those as A1. I think this is the first exhibit for this.
Shoot, I had a bit. So this is this is what I was referring to in my testimony. See that this portion, everything from this point down has been reconstructed. These are built out of plywood, but these brackets here, the brackets along the cornice line, this beam, and then these column capitals are original. Although this one here has been altered. It is worth noting that you can see what they originally looked like because you have the pilaster here at the end. So while the main porch has been rebuilt, the pilaster remains up against the building. Let's go back. Tax photo. Here you can see the portion of the side facade, side elevation, and then the construction of the reconstruction of the porch, the differing brick. I think that the super who lives next door was the one who rebuilt this. So just a general view of the side wall, just to showcase the condition. Another view of the porch. Yep. And then the rear facade. So there have been several additions that have been put on the building. Sort of a hodgepodge. So
Pretty early ones, too.
to me the fact that the original column capitals and the brackets of the cornice are original, and that only the shaft of the porch columns were replaced, I think that's significant. I think the fact that you can read original masonry openings in those side walls, and you could see that those were the original brick, I think that's significant. So, again, just in the spirit of collective deliberation, I cede the point about elements of the porch not being original and having been reconstructed, but I also think there's enough of the porch and certainly the sidewalls in poor shape as they are. The fact that you could read the original walls there, I think these are significant elements worth saving.
It also looks to me like the porch columns have been laminated with a 1x, as well as the top part of the bracket. You could see there's a piece of plywood that's been added to the top of the,
Yeah.
where the decoration is, to cover what was there. It's a tough one.
I agree with Commissioner Sakong that there's significant historic fabric on the building still extent there, and I think that it's actually, while some of the material workmanship subsequently is not up to standard, it's pretty typical of almost every building we ever see that comes before us. And if you're looking at the back of the building, the additions are almost it's just incredibly typical of every building that we ever see come before us. So it's hard for me to say, no, I can't say that this is worth saving. So I would lean toward denying an application for demolition.
Any other commissioners have any comments, questions? Just as a reminder, because it has been a second, this, because it's a demo review and not a certificate of appropriateness, we just do need a majority on this, right? So it does need to be 4, not 5. And for any path we take is, the recommended motion is always I recommend to approve or I recommend to deny demolition of this building to the zoning officer.
I concur with Commissioners Sakong and Sandkamp.
I'd like to make a motion to deny demolition. I'd like to make a motion to
Recommend to
recommend
deny.
denial of demolition to the zoning officer.
Anyone want to second it? And again, that's,
I'll second. We need a citation.
no. Or, well, so, yeah, it would be for the reasons stated on the record and in the memo provided by staff.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Sandkamp,
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
No.
okay, Commissioner Amatuza,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gucciardo,
Given the parameters that we have to follow, I have to vote aye.
okay, and Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, there are 5 votes in favor, 1 against, no abstentions. The recommendation to the zoning officer to deny demolition is passed.
Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate your sympathy for the applicant here and
Absolutely.
and taking this very seriously.
Not an easy
So,
one for us.
Yeah, really appreciate
And thank you for
Thanks.
coming to make the case. I mean, it's nice to hear the context.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, we have one more demo.
Oh,
So the next demolition, Robert, if you want to call the next
That's
demo.
JFK?
Yes.
All right, so demolition review for 2748 John F. Kennedy Boulevard. It's number B-24-0 1093.
Okay, let me just pull up. Oh, yeah, thank you. Let me put this on everyone's screens. So this is honestly kind of a similar case. This is a building that has also been altered, but not as much as the other building, right? So let's situate everyone. So we are on the east side of Kennedy, in between Bond and Stuyvesant, although SIP is probably a better mid-block. This is one of the longer blocks on Kennedy, just south of Journal Square. And this building is also, they gave, honestly, not great view of the adjoining homes, but we have a bunch of similarly designed homes, all single family, larger homes, each in varying states. Of course, the one to the left has been very well maintained, and we'd love to encourage the other property owners to maintain it as well as that one. But we are considering this building, the second one to the right, that has a combination of stucco and brick. So this building is also mentioned in the inventory individually. It is also in the Phase 1 survey. The Phase 1 survey for this building is actually much closer to its current condition and tax card photo. So the tax card photo here is not great. This is why I really dislike these scanned tax card photos. However, you can pretty clearly see what the things that you can see in this, right, is that the shape of the roof line is intact. The window fenestration is intact. The porch shape is intact. It is the porch shape, the port materials on the porch themselves have been altered, but you have those elements of location design. You definitely have setting intact here. And you definitely have feeling intact. You do also have a garage structure on this site, which is also intact, although I don't have photos of it. Now, in terms of materials on the building, we do have to utilize my favorite section of the tax card, which I think is everyone's least used favorite section of the tax card, and that would be the description for what the building is. So even though the stucco looks like a modern material, in this case, it's actually the original historic material, right? You have stucco on frame here with some face brick on the second floor with a brick foundation. Let's bring up the photo of the building again, right? So you still have the stucco on the top floor with that brick below and the brick foundation, right? So you do have at least some materials intact here. That the type of stucco here has a distinctive name, and I don't remember the name of it, but that style of stucco has a name.
Pancakes.
Is it?
Pancake stucco.
Right. So again, because of its inclusion on the master plan, because of its inclusion in the Phase 1 survey, and because we do believe that the building is mostly intact, we are recommending denial of this one as well. Any questions?
No, I would just like to comment that these are former clients of mine, and the house is a fortress.
Okay.
I would make a motion to deny demolition.
I'll second.
Motion to recommend denial.
I'll make a motion to recommend denial.
Paul, you want to resecond that?
Second, yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Cronin.
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandkamp.
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong.
Aye.
Commissioner Griega's absent. Gunther's absent. Blazek's absent. Vice Chair Gutierrez.
Aye.
And Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Right, there are 6 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The recommendation to deny demo is approved. All right, let's very quickly on the meeting agenda. All right, so just the other cases, 169 and 179 Palisade, 116 Magnolia, and the Morris Canal and Central Railroad applications have all been carried to the October meeting at the request of the applicant. 384 Communipaw has also been carried to the October meeting at the request of the applicant. I do genuinely hope they come to a meeting soon. We do not have any resolutions to introduce or discuss. We do not have any resolutions to memorialize. We do not need an executive session, so that just leaves us with adjournment.
Second.
Okay, it is 9:17. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.